Alright guys, welcome back to part 2 of how to paint a Shadowseer. Today we'll be looking at how to do the ribbons, the headpiece and the staff. Alright, so let's get straight into it. On our palette we have Vallejo Ivory, Sol Yellow, Sunset Purple, Deep Blue and Sky Blue. Now, with the exception of the ivory, these are all scale colour paints. If you don't have any of these, check the description for a list of equivalents. Now, in order to keep the colours clean and vibrant, you can see that I've pre-based these areas with Vallejo Ivory. To start off, we're going to paint the ribbons with our yellow. Strictly speaking, it's not necessary to paint the whole section, because we're going to be painting over a lot of this. So if you want, just skip this step. Take some of your purple and paint a small section at the bottom of the ribbon. Don't make any attempt to blend this, just block in the colour. Now we're going to mix some purple and yellow together to give us this rich orange colour. Just go ahead and block this in next to the purple. It's going to look pretty horrific, but don't panic. We're going to use a process called tweening to blend the join. The basic idea of tweening is to take an equal mix of the two colours you want to blend, essentially making a colour in between the two. So in this case, 50% purple and 50% orange. Now we're going to draw this colour over the join in both directions. Notice here that I let it overlap each colour. You can see here that this gives an almost immediate blend between the two. Now the join is going to be a little rough when it dries, but we can clean this up with a glaze. So just make a glaze with your in-between colour, and we'll glaze over the rough areas going towards the join in each direction. So you're just going to continue this process up the rest of the ribbon. So to clarify this, you're going to mix a slightly lighter colour by adding more yellow. Then you're going to block this in next to your orange. Then create a 1-to-1 mix of these two colours and use that to paint over the transition. Then you can use glazes to clean up any blemishes. If you want a faster and slightly more advanced approach, you can use localized wet blending. We'll start off in the same manner as before, creating bands of progressively lighter colours. Then, in order to blend them, we'll use a localized wet blend focusing on the point where the two colours meet. So to illustrate that, you place your first colour at the edge of the transition. Now you clean your brush and quickly switch to your next colour. Using a back and forth motion, gradually move the brush into the other colour. Then move it back up, keeping that same constant back and forth movement. Alright, so if we dry that off with our hairdryer, it should be blended together.
Nice.
Now you're just going to continue that process over the rest of the ribbon. You can see that this method is a lot faster, but it's going to take a bit of practice before you get it right. We'll move on to the headpiece now. Again, we'll be wet blending here, this time with Deep Blue and Sunset Purple. Paint on your Deep Blue towards the lower half of the piece. Then clean your brush and start to paint on your purple on the upper half. Use that side to side motion we talked about earlier to draw the two colours together. And then do the same thing on the other side. Now you're going to be painting a pattern over this, so it doesn't really matter if the blend is perfect. A rough blend will do. Once that's dry, we'll paint a diamond pattern with Vallejo Ivory. I find it's easiest if you start out at the top and then work your way down. So like I explained on the last video, you're going to paint diagonal lines in one direction, then turn it around and do the same in the other direction. Once you finish, you're going to fill in the boxes, giving you this checkerboard pattern. Now we're going to paint over this, which will look like so. To do this, paint the top two rows with Sol Yellow. The next row is the same orange we used on the ribbon, and the final row will be Sunset Purple. In order to get the fade between the orange and yellow, you simply glaze down with the orange, creating a transition between the two. For the mask, we're going to start off with our Deep Blue. Now we'll switch straight to Sky Blue and we're going to start to stipple this onto the mask to create a pearlescent effect. When you're doing this, you want to visualise a point on the mask and then allow the paint to become more opaque the closer you get to this point. To do this, you simply apply more dots at that focal point. Build up the intensity around that point by adding some ivory to your sky blue, and simply keep stippling over a successively smaller area. Finally, add a small dot of white on your focal point. For the weird barber's pole thing, start with an even coat of ivory, then we'll glaze with the same orange we used earlier, from the centre of the pole towards the outer edges. This is going to create a subtle colour change. Now we're going to paint a spiral across the length of the pole. I'm just going to freehand this, but if you want to make it easier, you can mask it off with some tape first. So what I'm doing here is painting along a diagonal starting at one end, and then I flip the piece over and continue painting it round so that it runs parallel to the rest of the line. There is an easier way to do this where you just paint broken lines along one side. So then you just flip it over and simply join the ends of the lines. It's actually similar to the way you do the diamond patterns. But you run the risk of ruining the spiral because there's a high chance that you're going to misconnect one of the ends. So it's really up to you which approach you want to use. To finish this up, just take some of your deep blue and paint it towards the end of the spiral. Then you can make a bit of a glaze and glaze into the blue so that it creates a bit of a transition between the dark blue and light blue. You don't have to do this, but it makes it a bit more engaging than just having a single blue across the whole of the pole. Alright guys, so that's the end of part 2. In part 3 we're going to finish off the base. That should be up on Saturday morning, so keep an eye out for that. Don't forget to like and share the video. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all in part 3. Thanks again. Bye for now.